Hi, this is Anna Hackman from Green Talk, and today we have a really special guest. Devora and I have been talking offline for a while, and she really rocks my world. She is so inspiring, so passionate. She has actually created a cure for something that really needed to be done. She is the CEO and founder of KOL Food, and it's 100% grass-fed organic kosher food. And for those of you who don't know kosher foods, Devora's going to go into it for us and explain it. But this is really, for you, that people that don't know about this, it's a really hard concept, combining kosher and organic. Devora, thank you so much for coming on to Green Talk. And I really want to, first of all, we have a lot of viewers that may not understand what kosher is. And if you could just walk us through simply, what kosher food is, and then how you combine the organic part of it and why that was so important. That will give people kind of a backdrop to our discussion.
Sure. I'm really just going to be speaking for meat. But kosher certified meat really starts at the slaughter. So nothing about the way that the animals live their lives impacts whether or not they are kosher. So they can be raised on feedlots, they can be raised, in confinement. And, they are basically the same conventional animals that you'll find non-kosher. But they are slaughtered differently, and they're slaughtered by a ritual slaughterer. And then and that's sort of the beginning of the kosher process. I should backtrack a little bit. There's only certain kinds of animals that can be kosher. So, for example, like pork is not kosher by definition. So it has to be a certain kind of an animal, and then it has to be kosher slaughtered by a ritual slaughterer. And after that, all sorts of things that have to happen. It has to be internally inspected post-slaughter, by the ritual slaughterer. And it has to pass that inspection. It's actually more difficult for a beef to pass a kosher inspection than it is for it to pass USDA. They really meticulously inspect the animal's lungs and only around like 30% of cattle that are feedlot raised pass this internal inspection. And after that, in America, only the forequarters can be used as kosher. So at the end of the day, of all the animals that are kosher slaughtered, you would only get, a third that pass kosher, and then only the forequarters of that third that could be sold.
You yourself you were a vegetarian for a long time, right?
I had a vegetarian kitchen for 15 years.
And so why the switch? What happened?
Well, what happened is I started producing my own meat, and so I'm good with it now. But I had a vegetarian kitchen because I really didn't want to, support industrial animal agriculture, and now I don't have to. So I was never a vegetarian, but I didn't want to actually buy in and cook that meat. As it is now, I'm a vegetarian except for maybe like 2 nights of the month. But I guess there's a word for that. It's meat minimalist.
Yeah, meat minimalist, yeah.
I think a lot of my customers are meat minimalists. They'll have meat on Shabbat, or, like I said, like once or twice a week, but certainly not, the 3 times a day that this country is kind of finding standard right now.
Right. And, but what was the epiphany? What happened that, here we have kosher, which we're thinking to be allegedly more humane. Was it that you didn't, was it just simply because the way that the animals were being raised, or was it also what you were finding out that it wasn't so humane? What was the trigger for you?
There's so many issues with industrial meat production. I mean, yes, it is inhumane to have animals not treated as animals, not allow them to have like the lives that they have had for, thousands of years, but to like stick them into a factory operation where they never, like for chickens, they never see the light of day ever. I mean, we could go into all sorts of details about this, but I mean, it is inhumane to be raising animals as a cog in a machine as opposed to, like actual beings that have, And so that was a big part of it. But, there's huge environmental impacts, negative environmental impacts to raising animals in confinement. You're left with a problem of waste, of what do you do with the piles and piles of manure. This didn't used to be a problem when animals were raised on grass. And then also, farmers and people who live around these farms have to actually I mean, it's unhealthy for them.
Right.
Breathing in all this like dust that's waste. I mean, it's coming from these animals.
So how did you go from okay,
the last thing one more thing. The
okay.
last thing about it is that grass-fed meat that is, made 100% on grass. I mean, animals that are raised 100% on grass is so much healthier.
Oh, yes.
So much healthier for the consumer, not just for the animal or for the farmers, but it's so much healthier for the consumer. I mean, these animals are ruminants. They're not supposed to be eating corn and feed and all this stuff. They're supposed to be eating grass, and when they are eating grass, they are high in omega-3s. They've got these CLAs, which are cancer-fighting agents. So their fats are much more healthy and fewer. They're less fat. So, I mean, the health benefits are huge. And I have a lot of people coming to me just for the health benefits as well.
Right. But, but it's funny because I'm looking at you and going like, so Devora, how'd you become a farmer? I mean, how did you all of a sudden wake up one day and say, I'm not going to take this anymore. I'm going to do it myself?
Well, I started out just wanting to have organic vegetables that, I knew where they were coming from, that I had a relationship with my farmer. And I have 4 kids, and I wanted them to have a relationship with the natural world. I mean, we're just so far removed. And I live in an apartment, in a city, and I have like flower boxes, and that's sort of the extent of my, ability to grow things. And I'm not saying that's nothing, but it's not much. And so I think that a lot of people, especially when people talk about like this yearn for local, I mean, what they're really talking about is they really just want to have a connection. I mean, I think the most profound connection we can have with our environment and with nature is through our food. And, because that doesn't just impact our our mind and, our spirit, but it impacts our bodies. So, and it impacts us 3 times a day. So, so I think it's really important to know where, and know your farmers and have that experience. And so I developed this relationship with a local organic vegetable farmer, who's also Jewish. And my kids and I have now been going out to this farm for, I think we're on our like 7th or 8th season. And the farmer had chickens. and raised outside on pasture, never in confinement, and turkeys also. And I wanted to see what it would take to, be able to bring that to my table. And I also had been a vegetarian. Well, I also had had a vegetarian kitchen for 15 years, and I knew I was, if it was this turkey, then I'd be okay with it in my kitchen. So, so that's how this all started. It was way more complicated than I had ever imagined. I had plenty of people saying, "Oh boy, you don't want to go there." And my farmer did it once and said, "No, thank you." After that, and so it's had a lot of different phases, but the minute I started having this meat available, and I was thinking I was just going to have it available for my community and my friends and my family. The minute I had it, I had people calling me from all around the city, and then also from other cities. And I thought, well, why don't I just do this is, too good of an idea and too much interest in it. And why don't I, start this on a bigger level? So I actually quit my job. I was in educational technology, completely, like a desk job, basically. And I got some funding, and I launched this business, and that was 2008. So,
so how do you get, there's two different things here. You have the organic side of it, and you also have the kosher side of it, which is you have to bring in another party to bless your animals and do all the rituals and do all that stuff. So that even makes it doubly as hard.
It's crazy complicated.
So how did you get the farmer on one hand to say, yeah, I'm going to do this, and then the mishgiach or the rabbi, is it a rabbi, or is mishgiach always a rabbi, or?
Well, they usually have both of them.
Okay.
It takes more than one.
So how did you create the marriage?
Well, initially I hired a freelance rabbi to go out to the farm and slaughter, it was turkeys, to slaughter the turkeys on the farm. And I actually did a whole thing around it. I called it like this Meet Your Meat, and I had people coming from our synagogue to sort of talk to the shochet, which is the slaughterer, and the farmer. And it was all this whole experiential education. And then actually after this event, then we made a meal, and we sat and ate together with the farmer and the slaughterer and cook and everybody involved, which was pretty cool. Now what I'm doing is I'm instead of bringing, I wanted to be under national certification, for National Kosher certification, and I also wanted to be under USDA certification, because now I'm working with folks from, I have customers from around the country. I, send meat out FedEx, and when meat or anything else crosses state lines, you need to be under the USDA. So once I became, once that happened, I had to find a slaughterhouse. And so now I'm using a couple different slaughterhouses that do kosher slaughter. And there aren't very many. There's less than, I think there's around 6 in the country that do kosher slaughter, and most of them are, that are USDA certified, that do kosher slaughter. And I'm talking about beef right now, and most of them are located, where meat, where the cows are, is in the Midwest, and most of them won't talk to me because I'm too small. So, there's a small handful of options out there.
So how'd you find them?
Well, I'm lucky enough to have some that are not too far away. and I just developed a relationship with them. So
So do they also slaughter non-kosher animals at your slaughterhouse?
well, like I said, I know probably this was a little bit too much information up at front, but when you slaughter animals kosher, like you're gonna get a lot of animals that don't go kosher. So, I mean,
Oh, I
like said,
see. Okay.
with feedlots, only a third of them are going to go kosher.
I gotcha.
So be inspected kosher. So yes, of course, they do plenty of non-kosher. I mean, they do more non-kosher than they do kosher.
So did you also have to have the slaughterhouses USDA approved, or is it the meat? How does that work? How do you
The
get?
slaughterhouse is USDA approved.
So were they USDA approved before you got there?
Oh,
Or- Oh
yeah.
my God, that's so hard. You had to find a place to do kosher and already USDA approved. You must have had a little
Right.
intervention here, some divine intervention.
I don't know. But no, slaughterhouses, beef slaughterhouses. I mean, most of them are USDA inspected in our area, at least.
But are the USDA organic inspected? How does that work? The USDA organic part.
Right. So the slaughterhouse itself also has to be organic approved. And for you to be able to put a organic stamp on it, it has to be USDA organic approved. So my animals are all, beyond organic. They're like, antibiotic free and hormone free and no animal byproducts, no arsenic, no, all this stuff.
Right.
But they are not organic USDA because mainly because my slaughterhouse isn't. So and the slaughterhouse, I mean, at this point he feels like he has enough on his plate with just the kosher, but so so what can I say?
But but the funny
doesn't want to go there.
But the funny thing is that people think USDA organic means it's simply about everything's great, but it's not, because they don't have to be they don't have to be roaming around, right?
No, I mean 98% of them aren't.
So it's kind of like you're getting the benefit of, no organic, no hormones and all that good stuff, but their life sucks.
Yeah.
It could suck.
They can be kept in the same exact feedlots as the conventional animals. They can't be fed antibiotics. They need to be fed, organic feed. So, no fertilizers. And they can't get hormones. The chicken already doesn't get hormones. So, I mean, they have those benefits, but the life of the animals can be exactly the same conditions. And that makes for an extremely different quality of meat. I mean, a lot of people buy my stuff because of the taste, because it's so significantly different. And some people, like older people, say, oh yeah, this is like, what my mother used to make.
Really?
Yeah.
So tell me what it tastes like, the difference. Can you remember old chickens?
Sure. I mean, to me, like, I used to have a vegetarian kitchen. I see, sort of like that, the conventional, like confinement chicken, even organic confinement chicken, which, like I said, is like 99% of chicken. I just think that it, doesn't really taste like much, and if it does taste like, even the organic stuff tastes way too close to the non-organic stuff, and that's because they're raised the same way.
Right.
So, so to me, if I'm going to eat something that is as tasteless as I find, chicken to be, that's raised conventionally, like I might as well be eating tofu. I like, like tofu is, easier on the environment, like better, certainly humane speaking about,
right.
Chickens. So, like, if I'm going to be eating something that bland, I might as well be eating tofu.
Now,
or if I'm going to be dousing it with so many, spices so that it actually has a flavor, well, I might as well be eating tofu.
Sometimes I think that's the reason why people use so much salt. It's your instant flavorizer. Let me ask you a question. You don't do chickens yet. Are you going to? Oh, you do chickens? Sorry.
I do chicken, duck, and turkey.
Okay, here's a question for you. Somebody who's not kosher, who is not Jewish or is not kosher, you're offering us, you're your meats, your chickens are grass fed, they're organic, you really watch the store. Do you know how you're priced comparable to a product that's not kosher, that has the same attributes, organic, grass fed?
So, okay, so let me just backtrack just a little bit. We don't usually call the chicken grass-fed because chickens, when they're out there, they're eating grubs,
Right.
they're eating all sorts of things.
Right.
So,
Sorry about
you
that.
know, so they usually call it pastured or pasture raised. It is 100% pasture raised, but they're not eating all grass, which is because that's not what chickens do. But so okay, so your question was how much more expensive would kosher, like pasture raised chicken be than non-kosher pasture raised chicken?
Yes.
I think it's about, like if you go to your farmer's market and you get, a pasture raised chicken from your farmer, it's probably about like 20% more expensive to add the kosher. So yeah, around 20%.
So how could we persuade people to buy from you? That might say, "Oh gosh, 20% is too much." I mean, what added thing do you think you're doing?
A lot of folks that don't keep kosher favor buying, kosher products because, they know that the way that they're treated, especially in slaughter, is I guess a lot more. You can't just slaughter all your chickens en masse like they do with conventional slaughter. I mean, a lot of times they're gassed in a big truck while they're still in there.
Oh my God.
And you have to actually like hold each bird, and it so people consider like, it more tender. I mean, the time it takes, the sort of, one more eye on the product is, being safer. I mean, certainly it's a lot more difficult to get through a kosher inspection than it is to get through a USDA inspection. They buy it also for spiritual reasons. I mean, just that it has been, thought of in sort of, a different way. Like the ritual slaughters have to go in with like an intention. And so, I mean, I'm not saying that it's always the case that like the ritual slaughterers are like perfect people or anything, but people like people who buy kosher products that don't keep kosher are doing it for similar reasons that people who keep kosher are. Just that they like that that it has this kind of higher intentionality. And so, I mean, I think there's a lot of people like that, a lot of interest.
Now, you also mentioned at the beginning that you have a website. Tell us your website.
It's www.kolfoods.com. So it's KOLFOODS.
And so they can go on and they can say, "I want this, that, and whatever." Like it's a pretty easy like product selection, and then
Yep.
and then you Federal Express it out like
Yep.
right away. So
Yep.
there's and you do this all over the country or all over the world?
The country.
The country.
I also have different things like buying clubs and different sorts of opportunities.
Tell us a little bit about the buying club.
Well, usually I do them before the holidays. So I'm going to have one before Rosh Hashanah. I'm going to have one before Thanksgiving, and I'm going to have one before Passover. But I'm open to doing them more than that. Usually, the buying clubs are for folks that have kind of more expensive shipping generally. So I have lots of buying clubs in San Francisco, lots of them in LA, Denver, Minneapolis, Houston, these things. I'm from Maryland, so the product is kept here and shipping out there, via FedEx, is kind of expensive. So what we do out there is we have these buying clubs, and then in New York City I'm working with a bunch of CSAs, and going through them so that folks can purchase that way. And that also helps with, the shipping, although shipping to New York City isn't all that expensive. What else? I have.
Are you thinking of expanding to Canada?
Canada is tricky because of the border crossing. I mean, if I send something in a cooler with dry ice, it has to actually reach the destination before that dry ice melts. And if it is hung up at the border, which, lately since 9/11, it's been an issue, then you've got all this meat sitting in a cooler stuck, on the border. And it just can't be stuck there. So what I've done for folks in Canada is if they live close enough to the border, they have it sent to a FedEx office that's in the U.S. They cross the border, they pick it up, and they bring it back. And I have some folks that have done that, but I mean, you have to live pretty close to the border to be able to do that.
Would you be able to do a bar mitzvah if somebody said to you, Devora, I need X amount of meat to do a bar mitzvah? Could you do that,
Sure.
that big quantity?
Yep, I've done bar mitzvahs. I've done the Israeli embassy, conferences, anything. It's fine.
And
they call them like green simchas, which is like a green
celebration.
A celebration, right? So a lot of folks are becoming more and more interested in making their weddings green and having the food that they serve all these guests represent their values. And in fact, there's like conferences now. There's websites like the Green Wedding website, or
Right.
So
right.
So there's a lot of interest generally, and then specifically, for kosher meat as well.
One thing I wanted to ask you, because I alluded to it at the beginning of the video, is you've taken a very difficult task and you've made it work. So if you could give advice to women or men that see a need for change or need to change something or do something, what advice would you give them so they don't get so overwhelmed and say, gosh, I can't do this? Because you didn't do that. You plowed ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think that part of it is just my personality. I just like people, who said, boy, I wouldn't go there and try that one if I were you, or why would you do that? Or, listen, you've got X, Y, and Z problem. And, and really what, I sit back and I make them talk to me and I'm like, okay, can you tell me, I really want to make this work. And I know that, there's issues. Can you just, give me 10 minutes, and let me know what the issues are. And, and then you figure it out. I mean, what's the plan B? Like, how can you make the, if it didn't work in plan A, there's gotta be a C, or, so, I mean, it just fits with my personality that I sort of, I have people sit down and I work it through, and I don't just take no as an answer. So one of my kind of original farmer, who is still one of my farmers, once told me, she was like, we're farmers, we can make this work, we're can-do people. And I mean, sometimes you end up saying, okay, this isn't gonna work, but it it takes a lot. It takes a lot.
Did you ever think, looking back 5-7 years ago, you'd be in the same place you are now?
No. But it's been a fun ride.
And so what's the future hold for you?
I think I'm gonna ride this out. I've got a lot more that I want to do with the business. And, I think one of the cores of the business is not, just existing, but demonstrating to the bigger industrial meat producers that there is a core and strong interest in this kind of meat, and that perhaps they should think of changing their practices, and and who knows, I mean, influencing the meat industry in general for the better would be amazing. So, I mean, but along the way, like, it's not just the meat industry that has to change. I think some of the biggest consumers of meat are hospitals and, big institutions. Schools and universities, and they've got to decide that this is a priority and that they're going to put their money behind it because it is more expensive. And hospitals that have like $1 to spend on everybody's meal, and that has to include everything, I mean, they've got to rethink that. So, so I do think that people are starting. I've been amazed in the amount of time that I've been in this business. Like, people know a lot more. It's just much more a part of the vernacular, in America today. And certainly, I mean, even Michelle Obama's, got the obesity. People are thinking of thinking a lot about where their food comes from. Is it healthy? Is it healthy for the earth? Is it so? We just have we have to encourage that and hopefully make significant changes in the production.
So let's go back to, so everybody remembers I know we've already done it again. Let's do your URL. And your buying club, you said, is starting in when? 1st of September?
So the buying clubs for Rosh Hashanah, and I have more on the East Coast too, one in Boston, D.C., Washington, D.C. They are actually online now, so people can buy through the buying clubs already. And the deadlines are in like the second week in September for Rosh Hashanah, I think. And then, of course, anybody can always, anytime, also just buy and have it FedEx to their home. So so we have those two options, and we're in some stores and stuff like that as well.
Is that on your website so they can find store locations?
No, but that would be a good idea. I'll work on that.
But you'll are the stores mostly East Coast?
Yeah, mostly in the New York area.
But that's good to know. But you'll tell me that so I can put some of those names on the article. So
sure.
Everybody go to the website when I write the article, and there will be a list of some names. And as always with any business, it's going to continue to mature, and there's going to be more and more. And I'm sure eventually you will have a store locator, because I know you. This is only the tip of the iceberg. I mean, I met you back, I think it was in 2007, and you were just starting this. And look where you are now, man. You have flown. So I know you. I know in a year I'm going to go, oh my God, Devora, I can't keep up with you. I need roller skates. So,
well, honestly, it's taken this long for me to really have enough of an established supply that I could go into stores. It's a pretty new thing that I can supply, caterers for bar and bat mitzvahs, or the Israeli embassy or whatever. But it's a pretty new thing.
But I think that where change needs to happen mostly is us. We have to realize that it's important, and if we find that important, things will change in the world because we find it important. And business is business; they want the money; they'll follow the money. So
that is true. Although I will put a plug into, I think that the government could help out a little bit as well.
Always.
It's not just on us. I think we could use some good government regulation around farming.
Oh, I agree with you. But you started the discussion.
Yes.
You've started the discussion. You made it happen. It's not just simply talk. You've made it concrete, so it's real, and people are tasting it and they're doing it. So I have to thank you from the bottom of my heart, because people like you are changing the world.
Yeah, it's been fun.
That's what's good about it, is that you still think it's fun. Devora, it was a pleasure talking to you. Readers and listeners, this will be on the website. We'll have also a brief discussion on the website. And I don't think this is the last time you and I are going to be talking. I'm sure we're going to be talking over the next couple years. You're fascinating. And I think that everybody should take Devora's passion and follow their heart. Create change. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.